Good afternoon, everyone who is in this room and also who are following us virtually. I'm Jana Silashkova. I'm from the Estonian ICT Cluster, which is an umbrella organization for Estonian ICT companies, the main players who are behind the Estonian e-government ecosystem. I will be your guide today, taking you through the steps that are needed to develop an efficient e-government roadmap. And for each step, I will invite to the stage a different cluster partner talking about that step specifically. So let's get started. So what do you think when we think about a roadmap to digital transformation? So what is the first step that you need to have to get the process started? Anyone? What is the first thing that you need to get digitalization process started? Strategy, okay. Good. What's the next thing? Analysis? Good. What is the thing that you need to get things started, to start providing services also to your citizens? A web, of course. So I'm going to help you with this. Will, of course. So the first thing actually that we were thinking about to get the process started is the data. So the registries. And for that, I would like to invite to the stage Riho Gruuv, Head of Strategic Relations at Levercode, to talk about base registries and also population and business registries. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Jana. Very good afternoon to everyone. I know that this is the last workshop for today, so let's try to make it energized and interesting. Well, as said, we need to talk about registries, and the first one that comes to the mind is population registry. By and large, one can call it the register or database of natural persons. And in Estonian case, for example, we have citizens of a country in the database. We have EU citizens in the database which live in Estonia and are residents of Estonia. And we also have residents of Estonia from other countries, non-EU countries. Database is managed by Ministry of Interior, which is also the organization dealing with the documents in Estonia, passports, ID cards, things like that. And of course, when we talk about database, we talk about lots of data. And in the population registry, you have naturally names, you have date of birth, you have place of residence, things like that. But very important piece of information in the registry is also unique identifier, which in Estonian case is 11-digit number. So people get it when they are born in Estonia, like babies. And this number remains with them till they die. Actually, this goes even beyond, because then the data or the person, the information will go to the archives. So basically you live forever behind this number. It is very important that the database is secure. Personal data protection is a very important aspect, because we talk about sensitive data about people. And it is also important that this registry is open to somebody who is usually government agencies, government people work for the government, as they need to get access to this information. And to some extent, it's also open to people like regular people, if they need to get, if they have a legitimate purpose to get some of the information out of the population registry. So the second one, which is very important, is business registry. So when population registry talks about it's a database of natural person, the business registry is a database of legal persons. And obviously the name says that we talk about businesses, but it's also the database for all legal entities, be it political parties, NGOs. They are all included in the database. And what makes it important is that every organization that is in this business registry will be given registration number. So this registration number of the business entity or legal person and the unique identifier of the people, the persons in the population registry will play a huge role when we want to have an efficient e-governance ecosystem. In business registry, you can have companies. Once they are formed, they are added to the registry. Every change in the status of the business entity, organization is recorded. Also, the information based on the unique identifier of the person will be recorded. Who has been adopting admitting the information with regard to this organization is also recorded. And business registry is by large more open to general public than population registry, because when we talk about data in business registry, usually it's less sensitive. You obviously have like a name of the company, some of the information, but you also have information about the people linked to this personal identification code, who are responsible for the company, who are members of the board, who can represent the legal entity. And this is also a very important component of when we talk about e-governance. Both the registries are heavily used by government agencies, government employees, and the digital access or internet access to these registries is very, very important factor to give the society speed, to make the exchange of information and change of information easy and cheap, if you want. In many cases, you don't need to use notary publics anymore. But my time is up, and I'm happy to hand over this mic to Aimo from company Datel, who will talk about land registry. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, when we already have population registry and business registry, of course, we need land registry as well. So you can link the property to either a business, a person, or a government, and so on. This greatly helps with taxation, of course. This is the main thing for the government itself, but it also helps the citizens as well. And on top of land registry, when you have the building registry as well, then you can link the buildings and constructions to that specific entity as well. So this is, again, good for government, for taxation, but also for planning. If you get these 3 or 4 things together, you can already start establishing other systems on top of them. So all these paired with GIS system, you can start with e-planning, gathering info from other registries and from other sources as well, from satellites, so on. You can create a good GIS system which is beneficial for e-planning, what is beneficial for citizen. Then the citizen can upload their own schematics or the buildings they want to achieve or want to build, and it creates a good base layer for e-society altogether. On top of that, if you do utility mapping, if you have these registries in place and a GIS system in place, you can insert your optical maps of your optical fibers, your sewage systems, and if this is available for all the businesses, there are much less problems in the future. This is it from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Aimo. So, now that you have your registries in place, what is the next thing that you need in order to get access to those registries? What do you think? ID. Exactly, ID. So that's the next topic. I invite to the stage Jana Krimpe, CEO and founder of Best Solutions, to talk about that.
Thank you, Jana. Two Janas who can get a wish. Thank you very much. Yes, exactly. We need identities. And in Estonia, we have different types of identities because identity is a critical infrastructure. And if something happens, and you see, with technologies, always something happen. You need to take from your pocket another identity. So in Estonia, we have eID, card-based identity, mobile ID, SIM card-based identity, and smart ID, app-based identity. All these identities use different networks, they use different technologies, and this gives a possibility of varieties of technologies. But of course, in other countries, you need to think deeply which kind of identity makes accessible services for people. Because we understand, for example, that smart card-based solution maybe is not good for rural areas when people don't have computers or they don't know how to upload different software. So maybe for them it will be much better to use SIM card identity, which works in 2G network. In some capital cities where the accessible infrastructure is well developed and internet is high speed, they can use smartphone-based identities. And of course, identity is this magic key which opens the secure doors to all e-services in your country, which should be very, very protected. So sometimes people telling, let's make very, very easy service to everybody, but security never easy, you know. So, and the question how to make onboarding also very critical question, because people usually wouldn't like to go now somewhere, not to make some additional steps. So here we can use, of course, some modern technologies like face recognition, biometry, and etc. But again, we should be very careful because digital identity is even much more important than your physical one, your paper-based passport, because this is magic key which opens doors to absolutely everything, to your pocket with your money, to your registries where your flat is registered, to some legal services, to create company or to pay taxes. So we need to think twice which type of identity we provide for our population. And of course, we shouldn't forget about rural areas. Because let's be realistic. Some people still have a low literacy. They can't read and write. But they also would like to have access to some very important services, financial services. They want to start their business online. They want to pay taxes online. We need to think about those people as well. So maybe to use AI integrated with identity, and people can be served verbally. They can call to National Call Center of Tax Authority and be served verbally and prove with this mobile phone, even with button-based phone, even not smartphone. So we need to think exactly about each separate country, which is good for its citizens. We need to think about accessibility, easy of usage, because not all people are good in a technology literacy. So the service should be very, very easy, so everybody can understand how to push buttons. So PIN code is very easy. So in Estonia, we have two PIN codes, one for authentication and another one for signing. And some people asking why? Because we teach our people to make difference. What is to enter to the door and what to sign a transaction. Because people never understand this difference. What does it mean to sign agreement or just open the door and to look to the data. So this is a crucial difference, and this is a very important part of identities. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jana. So now you have your registries in place, you can get access to them. So what is the next thing that you need to have? Okay, you have your clue also here. But for example, when a business registry needs to talk to the population registry, then they need to have an address of a business owner. What is it that they need to have? Interoperability, exactly. So I invite to the stage Adela Tuulas, who is the Digital Transformation Advisor at Cybernetica. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Indeed, so if we think about, first of all, thank you, Jana, for this introduction. So if we think about how do we make this sort of data between these different registries move, then in the analog world, we could think about a human being, for example, either providing this data to some sort of services multiple times, or be the one retrieving this data between these different registries that are often siloed. But clearly in the analog world, this kind of process can take a lot of time, can take a lot of resources, be very tedious, and well, if a person was doing all of this, it's almost impossible to provide all these services that we need to provide. So in terms of the opportunities that digitalization presents, we basically can remove all this manual work and the resources that go into it, and instead automate these processes. And this is where interoperability comes in. So interoperability is the ability of organizations, and specifically their information systems, to communicate with each other and thereby make their data seamlessly and securely accessible. So how can this be done? When thinking about an e-governance roadmap, introducing an interoperability framework, and specifically implementing a secure data exchange platform. Very dramatic. In Estonia, for example, the data exchange platform that is in use is the X-Road. So if some organizations want to exchange data with other organizations over this network, they join the X-Road, they implement a standardized security component, which becomes the sort of gateway for incoming data queries when a certain service or process is accessed, as well as a gateway for the outgoing messages, where messages are timestamped and signed as well. So this is sort of the technological foundation for these processes. But eventually, this technological foundation also falls under a broader interoperability framework. And this should also consider other layers of interoperability. So not only technical, but also organizational interoperability, semantic interoperability, legal interoperability. So eventually all these layers are important in addition to the technical side. But we're often asked, this is all great. In Estonia, you've managed to achieve this X-Road, which over 3,000 services are provided on top of this X-Road. All data is exchanged over the X-Road. This is fantastic, but how do you get started with such an overarching project if you have nothing in place? Now, our company has had the opportunity to take the lessons that we've learned in Estonia, the technologies that we've learned in Estonia, and also apply them elsewhere. And based on this experience, specifically in interoperability, we see that the answer to this question of how to get started is to start small. So start by, let's say, grabbing for the lowest hanging fruit first, connecting a small number of organizations first, making the platform work there, proving the value of this platform there, and then building it out from there. So, Rome wasn't built in a day, Estonian digital society was not built in a day. This is a long-term commitment, but with these small, phased, step-by-step approach, it's possible to achieve big things. And most importantly, it's important not to implement this data exchange platform or interoperability just for the sake of ticking a box or just for the sake of implementation. It's important to have a very specific purpose that this data exchange is used for, and this is something that the next speaker will cover in greater depth. So I think this is a good moment to stop, as the timer also stopped. So thank you very much. And if you have any questions later on, then we'll be at the reception as well, so we can continue the conversation there.
Thanks so much, Adele. So, as Adele mentioned, you need to have a purpose for the data exchange, for the registries, for the digital identity to access the registries. So what is it that you need next to provide to your citizens? Exactly, services. Thanks so much. So Tuuli Pärenson, CEO of Go4, will talk exactly about that.
Just a small correction from Go4 Estonia. But just to summarize, you've heard several talks already. After we have the minimum viable products of those registries, interoperability ID in place, what do we need to do next? First thing we need to do next. I recommend we should have a party, because this is a long-term journey. It's a long-term journey to build digital societies. So we should really appreciate those steps that we have already achieved and use those moments to really enjoy these small steps and successes. And the other thing that comes with it is that we should remind ourselves that ICT is a very human business. We don't do it for the technology. We don't do it for technology's sake. We do it for human beings, and we do it with human beings. So that's a very important thing to start with when we start thinking about services. So when we move to services that we can build on top of those core things that we have, then we have to understand for whom we are doing those. Because we need to start making decisions, what is more valuable? Because now we start talking about value, and value for the users. So how to really decide, is it justice, e-justice, is it health? What is going to be the thing that we do next? And maybe we can do them in parallel. So how to make those decisions? And here we have seen in many cases that it's actually very hard to make those decisions, because here we don't have any right and wrong. We don't have a clear path that usually things are done this way. There's no one single right way. We have our cultural context, we have our local context, what we have already, what has worked good so far. So we have to take that into account. And we also must understand that there is not one single group of users. So there is not one thing that we can measure and say that, yes, this service provides the most of the user value. Just to bring some examples. We have citizens, yes. There's many of them. They're different. All and each and every one of them are different. And when it comes to making the decisions that which service should we do next, it's actually pretty hard to understand that what do all the citizens want. And then, of course, we do have the public administration. They need to be efficient. Their needs are actually pretty much different from the citizens. They're more similar, maybe, but they're different. And then, of course, we do have different kind of managers and policy makers. And they actually know very well what they want. And they also have those constraints that what should we do in order to make sure that we can continue this journey in the long run. And that is actually a very valid point, because we always have to be able to advocate the benefits of building this digital society that we have to build constantly. So when we start selecting the services, we also must start building the portfolio management and capacity building that helps us constantly decide what service to do next, what to improve next, and also understand that we have to maintain everything that we have built. ICT is never ready. That's another thing with ICT. One thing was that it's a very human effort, and the other part is that it will never be ready. It needs continuous improvement, and we must start building the systems, how to make sure that we are able to continuously improve from the start. And here, word back to Jana.
Thank you so much, Tuuli. So when you think about services to provide to the citizens, can you think of a few examples? What are the ones that are needed for your citizens? Well, we have picked a couple today, and Rosa Kamal Ahmed, software engineer from Actors, will talk about them.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jana, for introduction. Welcome you all. So nowadays we are seeing a global increased demand in e-government implementation and transformation of services into digital format, or let's say e-format, due to the increasement of efficiency and transparency in the internal administration processes. And justice sector is one of the examples that follows the flow of digital transformation by integrating technological tools into court processes to ensure better justice delivery to the citizen. This can be done through implementation of e-court systems by digitizing the whole workflow of courts, starting from claim submission to the final stage, which is the case disposal. That tends to bring lots of benefits and advantages for the justice domain. Unfortunately, due to the time limitation, I will not be able to go through all of them, but I selected the most three important. First of all is the transparency. As we know, the transparency is the key foundation for building trust between citizen and the government. And transparency can be defined as the availability and accessibility of data for the citizen. An e-court system can ensure both that any citizen has a court case, can access the system and see their data and use it. Next important aspect is the security for the justice domain, as due to the sensitivity of court case data, e-court system ensures that the data can be protected in secure central databases. Even some of the data can be encrypted on the demand. Also, there can be layers of protection could also be put for depending on the different privileges and permissions, different roles of each user in the different institutions as well. Next one or next advantages could be a remote access that extends the availability of working regardless of the time and location of any user. There are, of course, so many other e-services that we can talk about. For example, public finance management systems are also very important for the government to have a central system to administer and supervise the spendings of the government and tax collection. Furthermore, can be e-health systems, which are very important also to ensure the fluent treatment of the citizen, and also the movement of the citizen or medical data of the citizen between different institutions. So the takeaway message of today is that digitization is so important. However, we believe that successful implementation of digital transformation depends on the 10 main enablers that they need to be exist before we start. First of all is the will of transformation. We have to have a will from all the sides, all the stakeholders, government, and everybody. Second one is the technological tools need to be in place. For example, ICT infrastructure and digital signature need to be exist. We need to have a thorough plan, strategy, and analysis before we start. We need to have a human resource with IT skills and capacities. We need to have a regulatory framework in order to ensure valid electronic processes. We need to have citizen awareness and their engagement. We need to have organizational changes. We also need to consider public-private partnership for such kind of transformations. We need to have a budgeting, and at the end we need to implement or develop integrated information systems with latest and modern technologies that best fits the different domains. And time is up. Thank you very much. We can have questions later.
Yeah. Thank you, Rosa.
Thank
you. So, last but not least, so when you think about the digital transformation process and really being effective and also up to date, so what is the things that you need if you think about technologies now? If you think about the key buzzwords out there, what is it that you need? Speak up. Security encryption. Any other guesses? What could be our topic? AI, exactly. So I invite to the stage Christian Janssons, CEO and co-founder of MyTitan, to talk exactly about that. There you go.
Thank you. So, how to take advantage of all this data that has been put together, how to build an AI-driven country, how to build AI-powered applications that can do things that are not possible with traditional methods, but require a more advanced approach, let's say. So what usually comes to mind is a strategy, an AI strategy. So where to start, how to do it. Being from Estonia, we like to be practical, and we also suggest that the AI strategy will be as practical as possible. So set clear strategic goals. Think about how many AI applications would you like to get deployed, how many organizations should adopt AI, how many people should go through AI training so that they could order useful AI applications. Once these, let's say, clear goals have been set, then you have to think about the enablers. How can they actually bring this to life? So you have to give instructions in the strategy of how can they get funding, what are the logical steps that they should follow, where can they, or from who can they ask if they have any questions. And these are the core functions of the strategy. Don't think too much about the legal stuff. This is something that can be taken care of. Now you have a strategy. Now you need AI use cases. How to find those? Of course, one way is just seeing what other countries have done. Use these as examples and see if it will be beneficial in your own country. But in general, AI is about solving business problems, and trust me, your people should have those problems. If they tell they have none, then somebody's lying. So find those problems, and the question is more: is AI the right solution to solve those problems? And AI is about automating processes in many cases. So think about processes where which are connected to these business problems, obviously, where there is a clear beginning and an end and logical steps in between. Of course, when in doubt, talk to an AI expert because it's not always so trivial. And you have a strategy, you have use cases, then obviously you need a team. But AI is hard. It is complex. It is probabilistic. It is not like regular software development. So to build a team that has a variety of skills that can solve numerous different types of problems, this can take many years. But to solve these AI issues, it usually takes way less. So I would say it's wiser to often just find a good AI partner for this. So yeah, I would say these are the logical steps. And if you wish to hear more about these steps or hear about the AI use cases that we have built for numerous public sector organizations, come to the ICT Cluster stand and we can continue from there. So I think now it is back to Jana.
Yes, thanks so much, Christian. Thanks so much. And I think we have time for a couple of questions. Any questions from the audience? There's actually one from workshop that I can see. And it's about registries, data exchange, and access. So it's a question actually to all the 3 or 4 first speakers. And it's a question about is infrastructure and access assumed to be in place even before the digital registries? So we had registries first and then the next pillars. And which one is first? So anyone from the experts? Okay.
I think this is a question forever, the chicken or eggs. What is the first? In our experience, not only in Estonia we find a bicycle. So we started to check ourselves what is the first. But in a lot of other countries where we started to implement the same technologies, I think all these processes should go parallelly. You can't make before keys and then to think about the building, or vice versa, to build a building and then to create a key. So all these processes should really to go parallelly. And of course, it's very important not to lose a track, to find the motivation group among the population who really yesterday need some very important service. So usually those are businesses who value very quickly because time is money. So if you start to create some real cases, so you create some fundamental registries, start only with population business registry, for example, create some fundamental services for businesses like online company and some taxation, and create a key, an identity. So it will be very positive feedback from your audience, and then you can go step by step further. So you shouldn't implement everything absolutely in one time. So you can go step by step with some small steps. And also one recommendation that, for example, a lot of countries asking that, okay, in Estonia you have interoperability, everything is everywhere is connected. It's a very long process. You shouldn't wait till all your databases or all banks have access to these databases. You can find small solutions, for example, to create identity for businesses and to create identities for civil servants, which is directly connected with registry, and they can have access to all banks or to all service providers, and parallelly continue to work and to create this interoperability. So be creative and just listen your population and your people what they need. So it's a lot of solutions what we can come and together to discuss and to find. So nothing is a first. Everything is parallelly and all together and according to needs of your people.
Thank you, Jana. Yes, please. Give you this one.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this expose. I look at this, it's like when you go to a concert of symphony, then who is the maestro here to make all of these things work together? Which entity? Is it Minister of ICT? Is it Minister of Finance? What it is? Because yes, this is all true, but the governance of this is another challenge.
That's a very good question. So, which one of the experts wants to take this one? Tuli?
I can take that one. So of course there have been different practices. As we know, in different countries, different things work. But what has so far seems to be the preferred approach is that as long as we talk about ICT standards that are agreed within one country, then there's going to be one agency called Digital Agency or something else that is responsible for those standards. For example, some kind of interoperability standard. And when it comes to those human-centric services, then there the drive is on the hands of the specific ministry or the agency underneath it. So yes, we need this sector awareness when it comes to those services. But when we talk about those building blocks, central building blocks, they should come from the center, or at least the idea and the management of those. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Tuli. Another question, yes?
Yes. Thank you for all the speakers. Myself, I'm from Libya, and I think the problem is everywhere. The most problem in Libya is when face to face with the government institution or any service provider, is the corruption, and separating the human being, as we are talking about human being, from face to face, from human factor to learning machines or machine learning, where people only communication will be with machines. How you dealt with this, and what kind of procedure? Because as we are talking about human being, means knowledge, and knowledge for a country who not everybody knows how to deal with the digital technology. What kind of awareness? Is it education? Is it training? Is it digital campaigns? I think this is one of the most obstacles that will face our country, for example, and maybe similar other country where digital infrastructure does not exist.
Mm-hmm. So, which one of the experts takes that question? Yeah, Riho?
Thank you very much. I'm not an expert, but having been a diplomat of Estonia 23 years, I've seen quite a bit, having worked with other countries, and it's usually the case of general culture of the country. Is corruption like a normal way of doing business, or is it not? Estonia has been privileged in that sense that we belong to the Nordic circle of countries, which has very precise ethics and low level of corruptions. And although we came from, we were occupied by Soviets for 50 years, and it spoiled a little bit the picture. We were happy to have low level of corruption, and that was very helpful. But our former president, Toomas Hendrik Ilves, once mentioned that you cannot, digitalization is something that you need to have because you can't bribe the computer. And this is very important philosophy that digitalization itself will help the countries to make the change. And it's now the decision or the leadership of the country that has to decide. Is it that they want to move forward, make their society more efficient, transparent, so on and so forth, or just enjoy their life as they are used to and be open to different business practices. But of course, we can only recommend digitalization and using every effort to lower the corruption. It will serve your country very well. Thank you.
Thank you, Riho. And we have actually one more question here from Workshop, which I think is the last one, or I would maybe prefer one from the ground. Yes, please.
Thank you. Talking about citizen journey and adoption, any recipes on how to tackle the change management? I think it's a quite important topic also for the adoption.
Yes, very good question. Which one of the experts will take that one? Tuuli? Okay. Oh, okay.
Very good question that is impossible to answer in 30 seconds. There are different very good practices in place, how to support the change management. And no, we can't go through them in a few seconds that we have here. But we can continue in the reception. That's what we can do.
Yes, so that's a keyword for me to say the finishing lines. So I want to thank all of you that came here into this room, thought together with us. Thank you all for the ones that listened to us virtually. And yes, please, let's continue all the conversations. The experts are there at the expo site. There's a reception that is about to start. So thanks very much and talk soon. Thank you.